Hey there, Shakers, and welcome back to another episode of Worth Your Salt, the podcast that's here to supercharge your marketing in the health and wellness space. I'm Jennifer Orechwa, StoryBrand certified guide, and over the past 2 decades, my team and I have tested, iterated, and learned what works in marketing so you don't have to. Now I'm here to help you apply the marketing systems that truly work. At Salt Marketing, we're all about helping health and wellness practitioners like you build trust, authority, and a nonstop flow of clients. So if you're ready to take your marketing to the next level, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. In today's episode, we're talking about how technology has enabled wellness practitioners to think outside traditional models. My guest today successfully transitioned his brick-and-mortar weight loss practice into a 100% virtual model, scaling his business while enhancing patient care. With the rise of telemedicine and digital health solutions, more practitioners are exploring virtual care models to reach a broader audience and provide personalized, data-driven support. Dr. Eric Kusher is a renowned expert in metabolic health and weight loss with over 30 years of experience in the wellness industry. As the founder of Compass Total Wellness, Dr. Kusher has successfully transitioned his practice from 10 brick-and-mortar locations to a fully virtual model, offering clinically supervised, personalized weight loss programs. His innovative approach combines cutting-edge technology, including remote monitoring devices and a custom app to provide daily support and tailored guidance to patients. Dr. Kusher is a pioneer in virtual healthcare, empowering patients to achieve long-term wellness through convenience, data-driven insights, and comprehensive care. Dr. Kusher, I'm fascinated by the model you now have and the fantastic success you've seen. I can't wait to get into this topic with you. I'm hoping we'll learn a little bit about your background and how you gained expertise in metabolic health and weight loss. What led you to focus on this?
Sure. Good morning, Jen, and happy holidays. Boy, how much time you got? It's a long story. It's you said 30 years. It's actually about 42, but who's counting? My background, to put it in a nutshell, has been pretty much in 1983. Graduated as a chiropractic physician and practiced about 10 or 12 years in the standard model, doing structural work and orthopedic type work. From that point on, I had been postgraduate certified in acupuncture and applied kinesiology. And a couple of years after that, got certified in functional medicine and been kind of pigeonholing myself into functional medicine from that point forward. So we've got about 30 years just doing that. About 10 years ago, the biggest opportunity that I saw and the biggest detriment to patients' long-term health was obesity and metabolic function. So I basically concentrated exclusively on those parameters and built a practice that was completely dedicated to metabolic health and weight loss. At that point, this was in about 2014-15, we opened up our first brick and mortar location surrounding the Boston area. Within about 2 or 3 years, we had 6 locations in Massachusetts. And about 2 or 3 years after that, we had another 4 locations in Connecticut. So there's your 10 brick and mortar locations. Mm-hmm. And we operated very successfully in that model for quite some time. And then either by foresight or probably just dumb luck, about 1.5 years before COVID hit, we took the practice completely virtual 100%. So timing is everything, I guess. But when we did that, we were very careful to get all of our ducks in a row so we could just make the jump seamlessly. And when we did so, at the same time, we built out the app that you mentioned. We were very careful in doing that to include all the functionalities that we needed to take to practice virtual. And, you know, weight loss and metabolic function is just one of those niches in healthcare that lend itself beautifully to the telehealth, model. Because, you don't need face-to-face. You don't need to show things to the doctor. You just need to really go through the data and actually connect and see with the patient in real time. And to make that transition, it happened almost overnight. One by one, we closed down the brick and mortar locations, didn't lose a single patient in the process. And actually, a large percentage of the patients actually like the telehealth model better than the in-person model. So that's kind of everything in a nutshell. From there, we go on to practicing via telehealth for the last 5 or 6 years very seamlessly. And it's been just a beautiful thing for me.
Yeah. I want to go back to, you mentioned your app, and I sort of alluded to that at the beginning. How did you go about the concept of developing your own app? Can you walk us through that process and how that came to be?
Yeah, sure. I'm obviously not a programmer or an IT guru, but it's all who you connect with. So we had a strategic alliance with a group of programmers who were in this space before. And we gave them one by one all the parameters that we needed to be included in the app, from daily monitoring, communication, video, remote monitoring devices, etc. And some of this stuff they never had experienced before. So they learned as we learned. And then as we built it and we got ready to launch it, we made darn sure that every single piece of functionality was in there before we clicked on the first video conference with the first patient. And it's grown over time. I mean, there were things that we do now that they never dreamed of before and we never had before. So connecting with different devices was foreign. It was foreign to everybody at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, we developed all of it to be seamlessly integrated into the process. And we can do everything that we can do in a face-to-face visit and considerably more 100% virtually now.
Very nice. And, I'm wondering, as you talked about the transition from the brick and mortar locations to a fully virtual practice, what sort of stumbling blocks did you see there? What kind of caveats could you give for someone who might be interested in doing the same thing? How did you go about that?
Boy, I hate to give you a short answer, but the answer to the first part of that question is none. We didn't experience any stumbling blocks because we were so careful in getting everything set up beforehand. So it was really just flipping a switch. It wasn't a dial, it was a switch, and we just turned it on and it worked beautifully. But as far as your second question, what I would advise people to do that are thinking of making the jump exclusively or more into telemedicine is just test, and be careful that by the time you're ready to make your launch, use people in your focus group to do pilot studies and make sure that everything is working seamlessly, because it doesn't take many snafus to turn a patient off and crash the whole thing. So you've got to make darn sure that you got everything in place. And there's always going to be things that get in your way. Tech always has a way of failing at some point. You're going to run into dinosaurs, patients who really don't want to adopt the virtual model. Those are few and far between, to the point where they've never really affected our practice in a significant way. But just get your ducks in a row, get your platform set, make sure that everything's working properly before you actually take it live.
So you mentioned going with a small group or a focus group ahead of time. Did you study your patients? Did you ask them for questions, take surveys? How did you go about it? And did you start with a small group? Did you start with, say, 10 people and move them over to the app and then go from there? How did you make that progress?
We absolutely did that. So I'm fortunate enough to have a very tight relationship with most of my patients. And I picked that sector of patients where we had the best communication levels and we were as much friends as we were patients. So they would do just about anything for me to see us all succeed collectively. So we let them know it was coming, and we gave them plenty of advance notice before anything happened. And we did pick somewhere between 10 and 20 patients to pilot this with first. And that's where we had, if any snafus, our little stumbling blocks that we had to take care of. But we did it within a group of patients that understood that it was kind of beta testing, and we didn't jump out of that until everything was perfect and we were ready.
Very nice. And so would you advise people to take that slowly? It said, like you said, it was like flipping a switch, but it seems like you had a good bit of steps in between. So what would be your advice to someone who's considering, moving more to a telehealth model?
Yeah, first of all, you got to align with the right providers. So if you're going to get an app built, if you're just going to go straight to telehealth, and you need all those intricacies that are in there, make sure that you've got quality people working on your side to help you every step of the way. Make sure that you've got people and organizations that maybe, if they're not familiar with everything that you want to do, they're open-minded to get familiar with what you need to do, so you can all hit the ground running together. And then make sure the communication was there, because this is a medium where, as you know better than I do, where if you don't get questions and answers back and forth quickly, this stretches out the whole process. And you don't want to do that. We wanted to go to market as quickly as possible. We need to get the partners to do that. And then, like I said before, test. Use your focus group, use your pilots, and make sure that you're all set to go before you jump.
I love that. All right, we're going to take a quick sponsorship break, but when we get back, I want to dig into the nuts and bolts of how Compass Total Wellness really works. Stay with us. If you're ready to take the guesswork out of social media and start posting with purpose, I've got a special gift for you. Download our 30-day social media content planner. It's a done-for-you planner packed with prompts and ideas to fill your content calendar for the next 30 days. Just go to saltmarketing.co/30 days to grab it and start posting content that not only connects, but converts. We're back here on the Worth Your Salt podcast with Dr. Eric Kusher of Compass Total Wellness. And I want to talk about the fact that there are plenty of telehealth practices out there, but you have a really unique approach in leveraging that technology. So what benefits have you and really with your patients seen with this use of tech-enabled care? What are you able to do that maybe you couldn't before?
There's a couple of different divisions that I would use to answer that question. The first one would be clinical, and the second one would be day-to-day convenience. So on the clinical side, there is no question that we've improved our outcomes and our clinical abilities by migrating over to this model. When we had patients that were face-to-face brick-and-mortar patients, we would see them once a week to once a month, depending upon their needs. And we would get kind of snapshots in time of where they were and what they needed at that point. Ever since we shifted over to telemedicine, we know daily, if not hourly, how patients are doing because we have all that data streaming in all the time from the remote patient monitoring devices.
Mm-hmm.
We talk to them, we message them back and forth. Every patient of ours gets communication every single day. So that really enhances the level of care and monitoring and oversight, and the outcomes show it. The second piece of it is patients really generally love it because it's so convenient. We set an appointment just like we would in the office, but they never have to leave their chair. They don't have to get in their car. They don't have to sit in a waiting room with a bunch of patients. It's one-on-one. It's right there. It's at their convenience, and we get all the benefits of an office visit without all the downsides.
Yeah. What kind of feedback have you gotten from them? I mean, I imagine that having that accessibility and that convenience is one factor. Do they like having daily information? Do they like having that much feedback?
They love it to the point where I think they're spoiled now. I think
Yeah.
if they had to go back to another program where they didn't get that kind of attention, it would be a letdown for them. So, as with everything tech, occasionally you're going to run into a dinosaur that just doesn't have the know-how or the
Mm-hmm.
capabilities or the desire mostly to step into the 21st century. That has been so rare that it's really not affected our practice at all. And in those few cases, if somebody can't click on a link to get on a video with them, we always do phone consultations. So I think
Mm-hmm.
anybody can pick up a phone and listen. So we really haven't lost any functionality in that whatsoever. And of course, like you said, the convenience is the icing on the cake for them because they never have to leave the home or office.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm also wondering how that's worked out for you as a practitioner. How do you maintain consistent support, but then you've also got to manage your time efficiently with the number of patients that you're seeing?
Yeah, there's a one-word answer for that, and it's delegate. Obviously, as a single provider, I couldn't do everything that was necessary here to keep this practice going.
Hmm.
But we have a really well-seasoned, well-trained, well-integrated team of health coaches and administrative personnel. So for most of these patients, these messages going back and forth, the data, everything else that comes in is monitored by our health coaches and elevated to me only when it's dictated that it needs to be. So if somebody has an issue or a health problem that the health coach maybe doesn't feel comfortable that it's in their purview, they'll elevate it to me. So I don't have to handle 9,000 patients a day. I have to
Hmm.
handle the stuff that the health coaches can't handle. The admin side kind of takes care of itself. So I will tell you that I'm probably actively integrating with 200 to 300 patients a day.
Oh,
And
wow.
that still sounds like a lot. If that was
It
in an
does.
office, you'd be driving yourself crazy. But the communication is so quick and instantaneous back and forth that
Hmm.
it allows me to do my job and still have time to do the things to keep the balance in my life.
So delegate is obviously really good advice. What other advice would you give to a practitioner like yourself who is looking to adopt similar tech and really expand their practice in this way?
Well, the other thing I would say that I think is the most important is always be on the lookout for number one, new technologies that can help support the practice and improve it. And number two, I am a hound for research. So I'm always looking at everything that comes through on new technologies, new practices, new things that will, at the end of the day, improve outcomes for patients. And as I learn these things and I vet them and I see that they work, and only then will I incorporate them into the practice. So over the years that we've done this, if I look back now, the practice seemed almost archaic when we first came into this,
Mm.
only because we've added so many things of value that lend themselves to telemedicine and really help patients get a better outcome.
And I love that you are basing all of your decision making on the outcomes. How what your patients are actually experiencing. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing else exists for me. If you do the right things and the patients appreciate the care that you give them, the rest of the business takes care of itself.
I love that. So, obviously running a virtual practice has allowed you to serve a broader audience. How has this model impacted your business growth?
Well, it's been fairly exponential, and I'll say that because when we first started, we were servicing only local patients. Now we're in Connecticut, so we serve patients within basically Connecticut and Massachusetts. It still runs into many thousands of patients that we have in our database, but ultimately we created two basic practice models. One is a physician-based practice model, which is kind of limited by licensure. You have to have licenses in the
Hmm.
states that you're operating with patients, even in telehealth. And the other one is set up as more of a health coaching type of an entity where it's not a doctor patient relationship, it's a health coach patient relationship.
Mm.
And that, because health coaches don't have any limitations on where they can practice, there's no state licensure. It allows us to deliver pretty much the same services without a few specific things that take all the geographic boundaries away. So we actually have patients in most states right now, and we didn't market those. We had patients that were so satisfied with the results that they got here that maybe they told their sister or their aunt or their uncle in California or Colorado when they came to
Hmm.
us, and that kind of rolled a patient into the practice into a much different level. So we handle both of those now very successfully, and we get similar results for every patient. The only thing that the distance patients are lacking is a little bit of testing that we do in the office for local patients to get a better
Mm.
handle on their metabolic function, some lab testing, some things like that. But I would say with the tools that we have left over, um, it's off by a couple of percentage points in the rate of progress. That's it.
Very nice. All right, we've got to take another quick break. We're going to be right back after this. You're listening to the Worth Your Salt podcast, and today I'm talking with Dr. Eric Kusher about how he took a thriving brick and mortar practice completely virtual. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so be sure to join us over on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook, and let us know the innovative ways you're scaling your wellness business. We're back. And so before the break, we were talking about the benefits and the challenges of a virtual model for wellness. What aspects of your virtual practice do you think have had the greatest impact on your patient's success? Is it the monitoring? Is it their interaction with you? What's really impacted their success?
I think the monitoring is number one, and the consistency and the level of monitoring. As I don't want to be repetitive, but as we said before, if a patient sees that somebody is looking over their shoulder every single day,
Hmm.
number one, it makes them more compliant because they know they're accountable. And number two, as they see the numbers improve, they get more and more motivated to continue to their goal. Um, the other part of this is if a patient needs to lose 50 or 70 or 100 pounds and we get them to goal, that's only half the battle. You know,
Mm.
there's a million weight loss programs out there, and now with all the medications and everything, you can lose weight. That's not the issue. The issue is keeping it off
Hmm.
for a lifetime or long term. And we've incorporated a monthly extended support program for a very low cost for our patients. So if they think they've got it and they're great, goodbye, come see me when you need me. But most patients really know from repeated efforts to lose weight that they're going to gain it back again if they don't
Hmm.
stay on top of it. So most of our patients actually opt for that extended support plan, and we continue to watch them month after month after month until we both, patient and doctor, have a feeling that they've got the lifestyle changes embedded now. They can handle this on their own, but we're always here to come back to should they stumble at all.
Very nice. So, looking ahead, what are you excited about? I mean, you're really a pioneer in virtual wellness care. So, what do you think is ahead? What's going to enhance that patient experience?
Well, I think we both agree that telemedicine and telehealth and virtual means are going to be the future of medicine. not to mention AI. So I bring the AI up only because since the inception of really AI that you can use, which is about a couple of years old now, we've incorporated a lot of that into our practice now. That's probably our most recent tool.
Hmm.
So we do use AI to help us create meal plans, recipes, specific exercise workouts, all things that are patient specific based on the data that we see from the patient and surveys that we do. So every patient of ours gets a completely different program from the next patient. So
Hmm.
it's very personalized and it makes the outcomes even better. I think if we're talking about weight loss and in a broader degree metabolic health, this is all data based, 100% data based. So it's not so reliant on a physical exam or seeing a patient face to face. We can do everything that we need to do and more in a virtual model. And medicine in general, you'll hear it on the airwaves all the time. That's the way it's going. It's
Hmm.
going telehealth and it's going AI integration. So
Hmm.
I'd like to think that we're just a bit ahead of the curve there, and we'll continue to do that.
So, with so many tools out there, there's Whoop bands, there's Aura rings, there's, just even your plain old Apple Watch. If you could give wellness practitioners sort of insights about the future of healthcare, how can they prepare for that evolving landscape? That tech is going to continue to improve. What should wellness practitioners be looking for?
That is a great question. The answer is somewhere in the middle. We've explored almost every tech device that's out there. You brought up brand names, so I won't. But there are things that we've looked into and vetted and work, but they don't add a whole lot to the outcomes.
Mm.
So the cornerstone is the biometric scale, and every patient takes home a scale or gets sent a scale that measures not only body weight, but visceral fat, BMI, body fat, muscle mass, a whole bunch of parameters that we need to know on a regular basis because I just don't want to see the weight come down. I want to know that their body composition is getting to the right place.
Mm.
So we can build things for patients to make sure that they lose fat tissue and retain muscle tissue, which is what we're after. Um, you know, the other things that are out there, the ring, the Apple Watch, this and that, those are great, but I don't think that they add a whole lot to the clinical side of the practice.
Hmm.
And I say that because there's a tipping point where you can throw so many devices on a patient and they just reach a saturation point where they can't take any more on.
Mhm.
So where we wound up was we used the biometric scale, we used the CGM, the continuous glucose monitor, and we use the lab testing that we do, and we actually do some genetic testing too. And that has rounded out our armamentarium really well. And everything that we've tried to go beyond that and add more detail has not reaped the rewards that it's worth to add it into the
Mhm.
practice.
I imagine that there's a point of overwhelm where there's just too much data and your patients can't necessarily handle that much information. So those key metrics are probably, yeah.
Exactly. You'll cross the point where a patient will say, "This is just too much for me,"
Yeah.
and and then you've lost the patient, you've lost the
Yeah.
compliance. So we don't want to cross that point.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when we talk about marketing and you talked about word of mouth a little bit, I know you have an ebook available, Beyond the Scale. Can you tell me a little bit about that and where people can access it?
Yeah, sure. The ebook is something that I wrote about a year ago, and it doesn't get too into the weeds with all the science, but it gives readers a good surface knowledge of what we do that's different and
Mhm.
how metabolic function really impacts weight control. So, at least in my mind, everything that we do is designed to improve metabolic function from a cellular level up. And to be perfectly frank with you, Jen, the weight loss is almost a side effect of the whole process.
Hmm.
So the easiest thing to do is if they go to our website at compasstotalwellness.com, there's a little link down there to click on, which they can get the ebook for free.
Love that. And if we want to learn more about you or about Compass, obviously your website, but where else can we go to connect with you?
Yeah, we have, the website is the main place. We have a Facebook page too, obviously, Instagram page too. We also have, which is really important to me, it is a private patient Facebook group.
Mm.
And that's only available to active or former patients. But I'm in there all the time, and I post every Sunday, and I haven't missed a Sunday post in about 5 years, just to
Nice.
give them new information and stay connected with them. And every now and then a sale on some items that are big sellers. But those are means that I use to impart new data and new knowledge to patients, because I want them updated as often as I am. And if I
Mhm.
can impart things to them that are not too complicated but will help them in their progress, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah. And I think that enhances that personalized journey that you talked about. Of course, a link to Dr. Kusher's website and everything we're talking about today will be over on our website at saltmarketing.co. But right now it's time for our lightning round questions. These are a few quick questions that I like to ask of every guest. Are you ready?
Go for it.
All right. First question is, what's something about you that often surprises people?
Well, I don't want to put this in a funny light, but I would have to say my age and my years in practice. You know, when I tell people that I've been practicing for 42 years and I'm pushing 70, their eyes just kind of open up. So from a superficial level, which means nothing to me, but that's what I get the most reaction from.
But it reflects the effectiveness of what you teach and what you put out there. So that's
Thank you.
fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Next question is, what is your favorite thing about the work that you do?
That's an easy one. As we talked before, it's the benefits to the patient. So every patient that I have taken care of turns into, from a marketing perspective, a walking billboard for me.
Mm-hmm.
All the people that they know have seen the transformation, and then they ask them how they did it. All the other parts of the practice are really rewarding, but watching a patient's health markers change dramatically, seeing the physical transformation and getting them healthier, again, that's always number one. Everything else falls into place behind it.
Yeah, definitely rewarding. All right. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
That's come from two people. Number one is Winston Churchill, who said, never, never, never give up. No matter where you are in your life and in your endeavors, quitting is not an option. So, don't beat your head into the ground, but if you see a way and you have a mission and a dream that can be done, stick with it. That same kind of attitude comes from another guy named Rocky Balboa.
I love it.
Who said it in kind of a different way, but that was the message of all his movies. The underdog can win just as easily as anybody else, as long as you're consistent and you're always moving forward and you never give up.
Yeah. And those are good advice, not just for weight loss, but in business also. All right. Last question. Yes. Last question. Who's inspiring you right now? What podcast are you listening to, or what's the best book you've read recently?
Yeah, well, I'm always looking at the clinical research, but as far as podcasts and books, probably the most recent book that touched me the most was something called Drop Acid. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Mm-hmm. It's by David Perlmutter, who's a neurologist, and he dives deep into the causes of metabolic dysfunction on a cellular level. And those things that he has put forward, the book is really for the general reader. His other work is a little bit more clinical and scientific in nature, but the scientific stuff has actually caused me to change my formulations on supplementation and some other things that really dig down deep into cellular function and get us better results. As far as podcasts, I do listen to a lot when I have the time. I don't know if you're familiar with Peter Attia. He got some really good information. Benjamin Bickman, who he's a PhD out in Utah, who does a lot of work on fat metabolism and insulin resistance and things like that. Rick Johnson, in a similar way, he's at University of Colorado, I think. A lot of your people may have heard of Thomas DeLauer, who's more of a fitness enthusiast, but for a young stud like he is, he's like 35 years old, he really comes across with some good information. And then finally, I really like the delivery and the messages that Andrew Huberman gives on his podcast too. So those are a pretty good example of the kind of things that I gravitate towards for information that I can use on a daily basis.
Yeah, those are great resources. And we'll be sure to link all of those up in the show notes. Dr. Kusher, thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode of Worth Your Salt. This has been a fantastic conversation.
My greatest pleasure. Have a happy holiday.
I also want to thank you, Salt Nation. If you've got a great success story, I'd love to talk with you and share your story with our audience. So tell us about why you're worth your salt by emailing us at grow@saltmarketing.co. Of course, be sure to subscribe to Worth Your Salt so you never miss an episode. Finally, leave us a review or give the show a handful of stars wherever you get your content. That's all for this episode of Worth Your Salt. Be sure to join me again next time. In the meantime, let's get out there and shake things up.